Hello and welcome. Hello and welcome to today's Coffee Chat with Companies. We are here with Noah, and specifically Lieutenant Picard from Noah, and he is going to share all about opportunities with this organization. And so I will hand it over to you. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you for the introduction, and thank you to Embry-Riddle for having me today. It's a pleasure being here, being able to talk to the student body, and again, want to thank Career Service for hosting this call. By way of introduction, my name is Lieutenant Dustin Picard, and I represent the Noah Commission Corps. A little bit of background about myself. I have been in the Corps for, it'll be 9 years this summer, so time certainly flies by. I per se, I'm on the maritime side of things, but I currently find myself in the recruiting role. So I know everything that there is to know, at least I think, about both sides of our service, the maritime side and of course the aviation side. I recognize that I'm speaking to Embry-Riddle University today, so I've kind of tailored my presentation more on the aviation side of things. I'm going to kind of disregard most of the maritime talk, but if students or faculty have questions about maritime, I welcome those as well. But anyways, back to introductions. Again, I've been in the Corps for 9 years. After I completed Noah Corps' version of Officer Candidate School, which is Basic Officer Training Class 122 back in the fall of 2013, I reported to my first ship aboard the Noah ship Ron Brown. That's our international flagship research vessel. So I spent about 2 years working on oceanographic research projects across the world with some of the nation and the agency's leading scientists, as well as with in collaboration with international and academic partners as well. I then worked for three and a quarter years for the NOAA's National Marine Sanctuary Program, specifically at Flower Garden Banks, doing small boats and dive operations, really in the realm of coral reef ecosystem research. So that was really cool operational job I had there. And then I spent 2 years as an operations officer aboard a fisheries research vessel, specifically the NOAA ship Gordon Gunter out of Pascagoula, Mississippi, learning fisheries research and helping to facilitate those operations. And just last year, about 10 months ago, I reported here to the DC metro area at NOAA Corps headquarters to work in the recruiting realm. I really enjoy this role, getting to meet and mentor potential applicants, kind of tell our story and get our name out there. So I have a Bachelor's of Science degree from the University of Maryland. It's a general marine science degree. I have a master's degree from Texas A&M University, in marine resources management as well. So that's a little bit about my professional and academic backgrounds. So obviously, yes, I am coming from the maritime side of things, but as I mentioned, I'm going to tailor this presentation to the atmospheric and aviation side as best I can. And I welcome questions throughout, or if you want to hold them to the end, I'll try to make some time for those as well. So let's go ahead and get started. This presentation is called NOAA Science in the Sky, Aviation from 500 to FL 450. So our Aircraft Operations Center, it's based down in Lakeland, Florida. NOAA Corps officers, we make up about 15% of our service. So we currently have about 335 NOAA Corps officers, and about 15% of that are pilots. We also have quite a few civilians, ranging from meteorologists to aircraft technicians, mechanics, engineers, and even support staff, schedulers, logistics, that kind of stuff. All in all, Aircraft Operations Center for NOAA has about 110 employees. Our hangar is based down in Lakeland, Florida. I know it's not too far from you guys there in Embry-Riddle. It's about, for those who are unaware of the location, it's about 45 minutes or so inland from Tampa, Florida, about an hour and a half south of Orlando, Florida. So it's a new building as of 2017. We used to be located over in MacDill Air Force Base in Tampa, but we shortly moved over once the Air Force got some new I think F-18 jets, and we ended up making a partnership with Lakeland Airport here and got our own hangar. And in 2000, we announced, April 2000, that we announced that our Aircraft Operations Center was actually expanding for new aircraft. So which aircraft do we fly? I'm going to start in the top left and kind of work counterclockwise. I'll just go over the names, and then I've got some accompanying slides on each individual aircraft here. So the top left is our DH-6 Twin Otter. It's kind of like our entry-level aircraft, I like to call. Bottom left there is our King Air Beach aircraft. At the bottom right, we have our P-3 Orion, and at the top right, we have our Gulfstream 4. So our DH-6 Twin Otter, I talked about it being like an entry-level aircraft. If you were to pursue an application in the NOAA Corps, you would first go through basic officer training class. That's our version of officer candidate school. That's about a 4-month program, completely assimilated at the U.S. Coast Guard Academy Officer Candidate School in New London, Connecticut. Upon completion of that program, and if you were selected for the aviation program, you would then report to our flight school. We go through a civilian flight school in Vero Beach, Florida. For those of you coming out with already a private pilot's license and instrument rating, the program would probably be much abbreviated for you. But for those coming in with very limited aviation experience, it's on average a 12 to 18-month program. Upon completion, successful completion of that flight program, you would then report to Aircraft Operations Center. Again, your likely first aircraft that you would fly on would be the DH-6 Twin Otter. This aircraft specializes in low-level research. It's highly customizable and can be configured for a variety of missions, which include marine mammals surveys, air chemistry, coastal mapping, snow surveys. It's kind of got a motto in the aircraft industry of low, slow, and good to go. And NOAA's got 4 of them. You can see their call signs there: NOAA 46, 48, 56, and 57. The upper image on the top right is our NOAA 48 crew in St. Simons Island, Georgia. They were doing a right whale research project and flying out of there. This was back in January of 2020. And the lower image is a NOAA NASA Firex project instrumentation. They called it the Chem Otter because it was a heavy chemistry project. It was outfitted with instrumentation that sampled forest fire smoke. Researchers at the time were trying to figure out how the smoke was impacting the atmosphere and the air we breathe. This was back in the summer of 2019. We got some more photos here. A lot of the work that these planes typically support NOAA's mission in is marine mammal research. And one focus I'd like to talk about today is the right whale surveys. So for those who are unaware, the North Atlantic right whale is endangered with only about 400 estimated left right now. One of the missions for the Twin Otters is to spot and identify these whales, track their migration patterns, and work with the Coast Guard to warn vessel and shipping traffic of right whales in the area. Often our pilots will fly transect lines with scientists aboard at about 600 to 1,000 feet looking for these right whales. And you can kind of see that on the left image there, a bubble window, which allows researchers to kind of get a nice vantage point of these whales. The right side image is actually a right whale mom and calf pair spotted off the coast of Georgia in December of 2019. Continuing on with this, the Twin Otters also help with this disentanglement efforts. You can kind of see a photo there on the left of a right whale that's clearly got some fishing line tangled around her. In fact, entangled right whales account for about 25% of their deaths. The Twin Otters sometimes are used to spot and relay positions to the disentanglement teams, and that photo is what you're seeing there on the right. It's a Twin Otter in the Gulf of St. Lawrence, actually, up in the U.S.-Canada border. Last summer, which is leading a rescue team to the whale to help with disentanglement efforts. So that's just one kind of focused spotlight of one of those projects that the Twin Otters embark on. Our next aircraft here is our Beechcraft King Air 350. They're predominantly used for coastal mapping and emergency response. Really what you can think about is, before a hurricane makes landfall, these aircraft are going to go out and get some baseline imagery. And then after the storm, they're going to go back out and survey that same exact area using for post-disaster imagery purposes. They use remote sensing technology, which is embedded in the belly of the aircraft to collect shoreline imagery prior to hurricane season, just preventatively and specifically in the days leading up to a storm. And then also, like I said, after any post-disaster. By comparing the aerial imagery, response agencies can actually better assess damage to major ports, waterways, coastlines, and critical infrastructure. We share this imagery with all of our federal partners, FEMA, the U.S. Coast Guard, anyone who's going in to help with this disaster response. Also, these planes are used in non-hurricane season to conduct snow surveys. Again, pretty low profile, flying at about 500 feet, and they're collecting collecting imagery to determine water content of the soil and snow. They do this throughout the winter, which actually helps helps researchers kind of implement that data into modeling, which helps forecast water and flood forecasts, mainly for the breadbasket of the United States for the kind of going into the spring season and early summer. That top photo at the top is NOAA 68. That's one of the 2 call signs, 68 and 67. And the bottom right is a three officer crew when the plane was in Ellington, Texas on a coastal mapping mission in January of 2020. So this is a pretty cool focus on the emergency response, a nice little aerial image of Mexico Beach, Florida. You might recall back in, I think it was 2000 or so, or excuse me, 2020, Hurricane Michael came through. It was a Category 5 actually by the time it made landfall there in the Panhandle. And it was the first Category 5 to strike the continental United States since 1992. Noaa 68 was actually pre-staged to respond, and before and after was able to collect these aerial imagery to share with our federal partners. Also, I talked about the snow surveys. So how does this actually work? Well, it's actually gamma radiation is used to naturally emit, gamma radiation is actually naturally emitted from the soil. And in the fall and in the winter, these aircraft fly at surveys, again, about 500 feet to detect these radiation levels. Because water blocks the signal, a side-by-side comparison of the data from the same line in the winter allows for forecasters to infer how much water quality is in the snowpack. Again, this is used to determine snow melts and potential flooding events that would happen throughout the spring season, so right about now. And this is a pretty cool photo of a snow survey happening in the fall of 2019 in New York, and then also in winter 2020. So basically same exact spot, just kind of depicting the nature of these operations. So now let's get into our bread and butter. I've talked about two of what we call our light aircraft, the Twin Otters and the King Air. And so now we're going to get talking to our heavy aircraft. Really what people know Noaa Aviation for is our hurricane response, our hurricane hunting missions. And oftentimes in the news, I'm sure you Floridians are well aware of this, but during hurricane season, or even when a storm's approaching, you're watching the Weather Channel and you're getting real life profile changes of the hurricane. It's often NOAA Corps pilots and Noaa Aviation, Noaa meteorologists that are going and flying through and above the eye of the storm. So why do we fly these hurricane missions? Well, we fly them to gather data about where the storm is going, what its intensity, and where it's going. So that way we can help inform the general public and make these make forecasts to save lives. We send that data in real time to the NHC, the National Hurricane Center, and they use it to develop forecast track and forecast intensity for the storm. It's then used by emergency managers to plan for the hurricanes and issue evacuation orders as necessary. We're called the hurricane hunters because we are trying to find the exact middle of the storm. We're actually trying to get through the eye of the storm. And on the left image, you have a Hurricane Dorian that did approach the Florida Atlantic coast there. And that's the P3 kind of flight pattern as the storm approached. The P3s tracked the storm all the way from the Eastern Caribbean, all the way up to where it made landfall in the Carolinas. The right image is the resulting forecast from that exact same storm. So you can kind of see the work that our aviators and our meteorologists were doing on the left-hand side and the resulting forecast that went out to the general public. So we have two planes that actually conduct these missions. I'm going to start with the Gulfstream 4. You might be aware it's a high altitude jet, and it actually flies about 45 to 50,000 feet. It was originally the Gulfstream 4 was designed as a business jet, but this specific model has been converted for science research for NOAA's operations. If you were to peek inside, you would not find leather couches or any sort of comfort like a private jet might offer, but instead you'd find science racks and mission statements. The mission of the Gulfstream 4 is above, around, and ahead of the storm to determine atmospheric steering currents and forecast track. The call sign for this aircraft is Noaa 49, and it's nicknamed Gonzo. So when this specific plane is flying, as I mentioned, it usually flies above the storm about 45,000 feet. And our meteorologists and our scientists aboard are constantly dropping these drop sounds throughout the storm. You can think of these drop sounds as weather balloons in reverse as they fall through the atmosphere and collect the data on pressure, temperature, humidity, wind speed, and wind direction. This data is then sent back to the aircraft, quality controlled, and then sent in real time to the NHC. So we're not even waiting for the plane to land. We're getting this information right back to the NHC so they can make informed forecasting. Drop sounds are key to improving our forecast track, and the right image shows Hurricane Katrina track with and without the drop sounds. So you can see without the sounds in the red there and how off that forecast would have actually been for such a devastating storm. The other aircraft that makes up our 1-2 punch for Hurricane Hunter is our P-3 Orion. P-3 and Orion are originally made for the Navy, and they were used as reconnaissance missions. And then they've been retrofitted for use as Hurricane Hunters here in Noaa. They're specially made aircraft now for Noaa, and there's only 2 of these in the world. They're kind of like labs in the sky, so to speak. If you ever get to get inside of one, it's pretty impressive to see. These fly inside the storm, generally about 8,000 to 10,000 feet, so pretty low, and they gather important data on the storm's intensity. Noaa has 2 of these P3s. We've got Kermit and Miss Piggy. And here's a nice artist rendition of our 3 hurricane hunting aircraft. Again, I mentioned it's a flying laboratory. You can see at the belly of the plane here some of the instruments. Oops, excuse me. Some of the instruments that are located there, and even at the top, you can see some instruments. Sorry, the image on the left there. You've got a nose radar on the image on the left that you can see, which helps our flight director and pilots pick their way through the storm. On the lower fuselage part of the body and on the tail, there's a Doppler radar. These are mounted to the belly of the aircraft and on the tail, and it scans the storm horizontally while the TDR scans it vertically. Together, these systems provide researchers and forecasters an MRI-like look of the storm, allowing them to see all the different layers and internal structure within the storm. They'll also continually to drop sound as well as the thermographs, which are temperature profiles that profile the water column. Further, they'll look at warmer water, which generally speaks to more fuel for the hurricane. So obviously if the hurricane's going over a warmer patch of water, then we can probably glean that it's gonna intensify. And so I like this next photo here. We've got all of the P3s that penetrate a hurricane. They actually get a sticker of the storm itself. As of June 2020, we've penetrated a combined 111 hurricanes between the 2 aircraft. The countries that are visited are noted on the top in those stickers. And I don't know if you guys can make it out from your end there, but there's actually 2 storms on that top row near the left, where you can see the stickers of the hurricanes themselves are a little bit different. And they're actually, it's because they're South Pacific storms in the Southern Hemisphere, and they're turning in the opposite direction. So yeah, we deploy these hurricanes not just in the Caribbean or Central America or in the southeastern Atlantic seaboard of the United States. I mean, we do deploy these internationally as well to help with some of our international partners. Here's some pretty cool photos. I mentioned that the P3 Orions, they look to get through the storm. They look to find the eye of the storm. And I'm sure you guys are all familiar with or have heard of like an eye wall. And this is kind of the stadium effect and what it looks like from inside the eye of the storm. On the left there is Hurricane Florence in 2018, and on the right you can see Hurricane Katrina in 2005. It's incredible to see how defined these eye walls actually are. So on the left here, this is Hurricane Matthew, which came across Florida in 2016, and this shows the flight patterns for both the Gulfstream on the left and the P3 Orion on the right. So the Gulfstream 4 on the left, you can see the flight pattern kind of around the perimeter of the storm, so to speak, and outer bands, whereas the P3 Orion just piercing straight through the storm, crisscrossing multiple ways to kind of find that eye and taking the samples from inside the storm. So just going back to this, just what kind of aircraft do we fly? You know, again, in summer, we've got the Twin Otter in the top left, the King Air Beechcraft in the bottom left, P3 Orion bottom right, and the Gulfstream 4 in the top right. And here's all their little patches coming through. And so our P3s and our Gulfstreams, yes, they're known for their hurricane hunting, but they actually do fly year round. They also look at tornado, supercell research. We deploy them up to the North Atlantic, usually to Ireland and England, to look at North Atlantic winter storms as well. Our light aircraft, they fly year round. That's our P3 and our Twin Otter. And our Gulfstream 4, they do a lot of work with the atmospheric rivers in the Pacific Northwest as well, especially in the winter time. And that pretty much wraps up my presentation here on Noaa's aviation. I like this slide. I'll leave it up just for a minute for social media point. We've got a great social media team behind Aircraft Operations Center. So on Facebook, on Twitter and on Instagram. Great follows for those who are interested in this kind of stuff. And I welcome any questions that anyone might have at this time.
Thank you so much, Lieutenant Picard. We really appreciate it. I will stop the recording and then we'll open it up to questions.